So I want you to imagine just for a moment, stepping out of the freezing, chaotic, deafening noise of the city.
Oh yeah, just completely leaving it behind.
Right. You push open this set of like impossibly heavy ancient oak doors, and as they click shut behind you, the world just simply goes quiet.
It's the best feeling.
It really is. You are standing in a massive, warmly lit library. There is a grand stone fireplace crackling right in front of us, throwing off this deep, radiant heat.
You can almost smell the cedar wood, right?
Exactly. The cedar, the old paper, the bindings of thousands of books stretching on these towering shelves, all the way up to a vaulted ceiling.
It's quite the visual.
And you are sitting right here with us, sunk deep into a worn, incredibly comfortable leather armchair. We are 100% present in this room together, just the three of us.
Just us and the ideas.
Yeah, and we know something extraordinary about you, our listener. We know that you possess, well, highly superior autobiographical memory.
Which is just a fascinating condition.
It's incredible. You remember absolutely everything you experience, every conversation, every granular detail, every logical leap, stretching back decades.
Right.
Because of that, the intellectual frameworks we are going to deconstruct and rebuild in this room today aren't just going to be, passing audio waves.
They're going to stick.
They are going to be permanently encoded into your vast internal library. They'll become foundational models you will use for the rest of your life.
It truly is the perfect mental architecture for what we are about to undertake today. Because we aren't just sharing life hacks here.
No, definitely not superficial business tips.
Right. We are going to construct a comprehensive philosophical and economic latticework, really brick by brick.
I love that. Brick by brick.
Yeah. We're synthesizing a sprawling, unified worldview originating from the entrepreneur and philosopher Naval Ravikant, and,
Okay.
along with the intellectual giants he frequently references.
People like Charlie Munger, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Munger, Nassim Taleb, and Kapil Gupta. We are attempting to completely decode the underlying mechanics of two things that most people believe are entirely contradictory.
Which are?
Extreme, outsized worldly success and profound, unshakable internal peace.
It sounds impossible, right? But because your mind requires a structure to file away these massive concepts, we've built a specific roadmap for our time in this room.
A very necessary map, given how deep we're going.
Yeah, think of it as a four-part evolution of human ambition. We're going to begin with Module 1, which is the wealth engine.
That's the external game.
Right. This is where we strip away all the societal mythology about money, decode the actual physics of specific knowledge, understand the ruthless math of leverage, and figure out how to completely escape the traditional 9-to-5 rat race.
And once you build that engine, you have a new problem.
Exactly, which takes us across the bridge into Module 2, the judgment matrix. Because once you have leverage, your decisions are multiplied exponentially.
A bad decision with leverage is a disaster.
It's so true. So we'll build out mental models, learn how to aggressively separate signal from noise, and establish airtight decision-making heuristics to navigate a chaotic world.
Which is the perfect logical pivot into Module 3, which we call Inbox 0 for the mind.
Because what good is the money if your mind is a mess?
Precisely. History is just littered with people who mastered the external world of wealth and judgment, only to realize their internal world was an absolute nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
So in that third phase, we'll deconstruct the mechanics of meditation, examine the painful shift from wanting freedom to, into the profound peace of desiring freedom from.
And explore the biological reality that happiness is not a genetic trait, but a highly trainable skill.
Right. And finally, we will arrive at the summit, Module 4, the single-player game.
The void.
Yeah, the existential void. Once the external world is conquered and the internal mind is quiet, we are left staring at it. We are going to tackle the heat death of the universe, the subjective nature of reality, and why ultimately the absolute highest form of human existence is doing things purely for their own sake.
It is a phenomenal progression to trace. What we are really tracking is the inevitable trajectory of a fully optimized life.
The external physical pursuit of wealth and status naturally and inevitably exhausts itself. It just has to.
And it gives way to the internal psychological pursuit of peace and ultimate truth. So for you, listening right now, keep this modular roadmap anchored in your mind.
Every seemingly disparate concept we discuss will snap seamlessly into place.
Exactly. So settle deeper into that leather chair, feel the warmth of the fire, and let's start building the foundation. Module 1, the wealth engine.
It's true.
Society feeds us a relentless, suffocating stream of narratives about how to get ahead. Go to this school, get this degree, climb this specific corporate ladder.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. But one of the most fundamental baseline distinctions we have to make right out of the gate is the biological and mathematical difference between status games and wealth games.
And this is where we have to look deeply into our evolutionary past. Because we are completely biologically hardwired to play status games.
We can't help it.
We really can't. If you rewind the clock 100,000 years to our hunter-gatherer ancestors living on the savannah, status was the single greatest predictor of whether your genetic line would survive.
Because you couldn't really own anything.
Right, exactly. You couldn't hoard wealth back then. You couldn't stockpile grain indefinitely. You couldn't put land titles in a bank, and you certainly couldn't carry much on your back while fleeing a predator.
Right.
So survival meant one thing being the alpha in the tribe. Status is, by its strict mathematical definition, a zero-sum game.
Meaning someone has to lose.
It is a strict hierarchy. If you want to be number 2, you have to violently push whoever is currently number 2 down to number 3.
It's a literal high-stakes game of musical chairs.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
When the music stops, someone is always left standing without a seat. If I win, you must mathematically lose. But wealth, actual wealth, not just the perception of being rich, is an entirely different beast. Wealth is a positive-sum game.
Precisely. We have to separate the concept of wealth from the concept of money. Money is just how we transfer wealth.
It's just a ledger.
Right, it's the social ledger of value. Wealth is the actual ability to effect physical and digital transformations. It's taking raw, disorganized materials, applying human knowledge and energy, and creating novel abundance.
Like the microchip example.
Exactly. When an engineer figures out how to take a handful of sand, purify the silicon, arrange the pathways, run electricity through it, and create a microchip, they haven't stolen that value from the earth.
Or from a competitor.
No. They have conjured entirely new value into existence that benefits the entire human species.
Or even something simple like a baker.
Yeah, the baker who takes flour, water, and yeast to bake a loaf of bread isn't taking bread out of your mouth. They are increasing the absolute, total caloric reality of the world.
Okay, but let me push back on this pretty hard, because I know what you're thinking sitting there in the armchair.
Go for it.
It sounds beautiful in theory, but look at the reality of the society we actually live in. Isn't almost everything we consider prestigious built fundamentally on zero-sum status games?
Oh, absolutely.
Think about elite journalism. Think about running for political office or even academia, where, like, thousands of postdocs are fighting to the death for a single tenured position.
It's a bloodbath.
So how on earth do we exist in a modern, hyper-connected society without playing those games? You can't just float above it all.
You are absolutely right that modern society is structured to pull you into those arenas. But you have the cognitive choice to not internalize their victory conditions.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
The problem with playing status games is what it does to your neurology over time. Because status is zero-sum, you are forced to constantly monitor the standing of everyone around you.
You're always looking over your shoulder.
Always. You have to put others down to elevate yourself. It slowly turns you into an incredibly bitter, envious, combative person.
Which perfectly describes social media.
Oh, it's the ultimate example. Just look at the architecture of social media platforms. They are essentially massive, globally distributed status conflict engines.
Algorithms built for outrage.
Literally. The algorithms reward outrage and teardowns because that behavior signals a fight for tribal dominance.
So the wealth players just opt out.
Yeah. The people playing wealth games are too busy cooperating, building, and iterating to care about who's temporarily winning the optics war. If you want to build a truly unshakable wealth engine, you have to consciously, aggressively opt out of the status game.
Stop caring about the relative position and focus entirely on absolute creation.
Exactly.
And that absolute creation doesn't just come from grinding away at a generic job. It stems from something the sources call specific knowledge.
Which completely flies in the face of conventional wisdom.
Totally. Society usually tells you to scan the macroeconomic environment and look at what's hot right now.
A decade ago, it was go to law school.
Right. Then it was learn to code. Now it's become an AI prompt engineer. Society tells you to force your brain into a standardized, highly commoditized mold.
Which is a trap.
It is.
Yeah.
But specific knowledge is the exact opposite of that.
Specific knowledge is the profound, highly idiosyncratic knowledge that you fundamentally cannot be trained for in a traditional setting.
You can't just take a class on it.
No, because think about the economic reality of a classroom. If a skill can be standardized and taught to a room of 200 people simultaneously, it means anyone with a baseline level of intelligence can learn it.
Right.
And if anyone can learn it, then the free market dictates that eventually someone in a cheaper cost of living area will do it for a fraction of your salary. Or, more likely today, an algorithm will be built to execute it flawlessly for free.
Standardized education produces standardized workers.
And standardized workers are instantly replaceable. Specific knowledge, however, is discovered by aggressively pursuing your innate talents.
Your seemingly bizarre curiosities.
Yeah, those deep, unprompted childhood obsessions.
Yeah. This is where the psychology of this gets so fascinating. I want you, sitting here with us, to think back to when you were a teenager.
That's where the clues are.
Remember what you were doing effortlessly that felt like absolute play to you. But to the outside observer, it looked like grueling, obsessive work.
There is an incredibly illustrative story about Naval when he was 15 years old.
Oh, the astrophysics story.
Yes. He desperately wanted to be an astrophysicist. He was obsessed with the stars, the math, the grandeur of it all.
But his mom knew better.
She did. She had no formal education in predictive psychology, but she simply watched him from the kitchen window. She told him, point blank, no, you're going to go into business.
And he was probably offended, right?
He was shocked. But she had noticed a pattern he was entirely blind to. Every single time they walked down the street, he would systematically, aggressively critique the local pizza parlors.
Just analyzing the local corner stores.
Exactly. He was analyzing their foot traffic, questioning their topping choices, dismantling their line efficiency, and debating their pricing models in his head.
He couldn't turn it off.
No, he had an innate, inescapable obsession with the mechanical gears of business and leverage.
And that story perfectly encapsulates the hallmark of specific knowledge. It is almost always observed by the people around you before you are self-aware enough to see it in yourself.
Because to you, it just feels like breathing.
Yeah, this is beautiful, highly complex collision of your unique genetic predispositions, the specific environment of your upbringing, and your individual psychological response to the world.
It's different for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For one person, it might be an obsessive love for dense science fiction that trains their brain to absorb highly complex, abstract technical data faster than anyone else.
Or for another person, it might be an innate, almost Machiavellian ability to map social networks.
Reading body language, gathering gossip.
Right. Which, if harnessed correctly, makes them an absolute terrifying, Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist.
It is highly stubbornly specific to you.
Right.
But if it's so innate, and it fundamentally cannot be taught in a lecture hall, how do you actually hone it?
That's the challenge.
How do you sharpen it into something the market will actually pay for?
You hone it through massive iterative failure, unquenchable curiosity, and deep old-school apprenticeship. You put yourself in the crucible.
Like Warren Buffett.
Exactly. Look at the archetype of Buffett. He didn't acquire his specific knowledge of market psychology by sitting in a university lecture, passing multiple choice tests.
He went straight to the source.
He literally went to the legendary investor Benjamin Graham and offered to work for him for absolutely free.
And Graham said no.
Graham actually turned him down at first. He told Buffett, "You're overpriced."
Which is hilarious.
It is, but Graham knew that the highly nuanced, unwritten, specific knowledge of capital allocation he was going to impart through daily osmosis was infinitely more valuable than a young man's free labor.
So you learned specific knowledge by standing shoulder to shoulder with masters.
Absorbing the unsaid rules and failing in the real world.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of this. We've managed to step away from the toxic status games. We've dug deep into our past and uncovered our specific knowledge.
That weird obsession that feels like play.
Right, but how do we actually turn that theoretical knowledge into an engine that generates massive wealth?
Because the knowledge alone isn't enough.
No. If I'm just taking my specific knowledge and charging a consulting fee by the hour, I haven't escaped anything. I'm still entirely trapped in the 9-to-5 dynamic.
Your income is still capped by the physical ticking of the clock.
Which brings us to the ultimate economic concept, leverage.
We have to examine the profound historical disconnection between inputs and outputs.
Because for most of history, they were linked.
Right. For the vast, overwhelming majority of human history, Inputs and outputs were tightly, inextricably coupled. Think about a lumberjack.
Okay.
If a lumberjack goes into the forest and swings an axe for 4 hours, they produce 4 hours worth of chopped wood.
It's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Exactly. If they want to produce 8 hours of wood, they have no choice but to physically swing that axe for 8 exhausting hours. There is zero leverage. Their output is entirely chained to their physical input.
But Archimedes famously said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world."
And in the modern economic landscape, we have new levers.
So what do those levers actually look like?
The sources outline three broad historical classes of leverage. The first, and the oldest, is labor. This is simply employing other humans to work for you.
Historically, it was the only way to scale.
Right, you build a pyramid by throwing thousands of bodies at the problem. But in the modern complex economy, labor is arguably the worst form of leverage.
Because people are messy.
Managing human beings is incredibly difficult, highly inefficient, and fraught with friction, largely because every single person under you is quietly playing their own internal status games.
So the second.
The second form of leverage is capital. Money. This was the dominant lever of the 20th century. Capital is fantastic because it perfectly multiplies your decisions.
If you're right, you win big.
Yeah, if you make a brilliant investment decision with $1,000, you make a little. If you make that exact same cognitive decision with $1 billion, you alter the fabric of the market.
But capital has a massive flaw.
It requires permission. A bank, a venture capitalist, a wealthy family has to give you the permission to wield it.
But the third form is the absolute holy grail of the modern age.
It is the greatest equalizer in human history.
It's products with zero marginal cost of replication.
Precisely. In our current era, that primarily means code, and it means media. And the defining characteristic of this leverage is that it is entirely permissionless.
You don't need anyone's blessing.
You do not need a wealthy patron to grant you permission to write a brilliant piece of software. You don't need a broadcast network executive to give you permission to record a podcast.
Or a publishing house to let you write a book. You just create it.
Let's really visualize the power of this. Compare that lumberjack to a modern software developer.
Okay, I love this analogy.
The developer might spend the exact same physical amount of time, say 40 intense hours, writing an elegant piece of code to solve a specific problem.
So the input is identical to the lumberjack's 40 hours.
But the output, once that code is pushed to a server, it can be replicated and used by 1 billion people simultaneously at absolutely zero additional cost.
It works for the developer while they're sleeping?
It works for them while they are hiking in the mountains. It works for them while they are eating dinner. The input is completely, fundamentally severed from the output.
The lever is infinitely long.
And when you synthesize these concepts, when you take your highly idiosyncratic specific knowledge and you amplify it through the infinite permissionless leverage of code or media, you create a dynamic where you are uniquely and massively rewarded by society.
You are providing something that society desperately wants, but doesn't yet know how to get for itself.
And you are delivering it at a global scale.
But as this wealth engine starts humming along, there is a hidden, underlying mathematical force that begins to accelerate the entire process.
Compound interest.
Right. We always hear about compound interest in the context of a savings account or a stock portfolio. But the true secret unlocked here is that compound interest applies to absolutely every single facet of human endeavor.
Yes, and this is crucial because the human brain is biologically wired to think linearly.
We expect a straight line of progress.
But the universe and complex systems almost always reward geometrically. Compound interest in your relationships and your professional reputation is arguably far more powerful than compounding capital.
Reputation is everything.
If you work with someone for 10 years and you repeatedly demonstrate competence and you build a foundation of absolute, unbreakable trust, the friction of doing business with them drops to absolute zero.
You don't need lawyers to review every contract. You don't need months of due diligence. You just handshake and execute.
There's a brilliant example we pulled from the sources about a Silicon Valley investor named Elad Gil.
Oh, people aggressively seek him out to do deals,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And why? Because over decades, he has compounded a reputation of bending over backwards to be obsessively fair.
If a deal closes and there's an unexpected extra cost.
No, he just pays it out of pocket without even mentioning it to the founders. He always consistently rounds the numbers in the other person's favor.
In the short term, that looks like he's losing money.
But because he has spent decades compounding this titanium reputation of absolute integrity, what
The
happens?
smartest founders bring him their absolute best deals.
The most lucrative opportunities come to him before they even whisper a word to anyone else.
Because integrity at its core is a long-term game.
If you are constantly playing short-term games, if you are trying to ruthlessly extract every last possible penny from a negotiation, or if you are secretly self-dealing behind a partner's back, you might win that specific transaction.
But you completely incinerate the compound interest of your reputation.
The most phenomenally successful people in the world understand this. Play long-term games with long-term people. Everything else is just noise.
Okay, I want to pause the exploration right here. Settle back into your chair by the fire. Feel the heat. Look at the architecture we've just built in your mind during this first module.
It's a solid foundation.
We have established that to build genuine world-altering wealth, you must completely extract yourself from toxic, zero-sum status games.
You must excavate your past to discover those highly specific childhood obsessions.
The things that feel like play to you but look like work to the rest of the world. And you must apply massive permissionless leverage to that specific knowledge while allowing your reputation to compound geometrically over decades.
You have built an absolute juggernaut of an engine.
But here is where we slam into a terrifying concrete wall, and this is the pivot.
The dangerous part of leverage.
Leverage is entirely agnostic. It is simply a multiplier. It multiplies whatever input you feed into it.
If you feed a brilliant decision into an infinite lever, you create $1 billion of value and change the world.
But if you feed a terrible, flawed decision into that exact same lever, you don't just fail quietly. You multiply a disaster at a global scale.
Exactly. Which brings us to the ultimate bottleneck of the modern age. If leverage is infinite, and we have server farms, algorithms, and robots doing all the physical and computational heavy lifting,
Then the concept of brute force hard work is drastically, historically overrated.
the only thing that truly matters, the sole variable that separates the staggering winners from the catastrophic losers in an age of infinite leverage, is the quality of your judgment.
Let's step into Module 2, the judgment matrix.
This is where things get really uncomfortable for a lot of people.
So we really need to deconstruct this because it offends our puritanical sensibilities. We grew up being absolutely beaten over the head with the narrative that hard work is the answer to every problem.
The 80-hour work week, the relentless hustle culture, bleeding for your craft.
But if you step back and look at the world with cold, objective mathematical precision, 99% of all human effort is entirely useless.
It sounds incredibly provocative, and it wounds the ego, but empirically, it is true.
Think about the actual trajectory of your life. 99% of the first dates you go on do not end in a lifelong marriage.
99% of the hyper-specific facts you spend hours memorizing for a history test in middle school are completely evaporated from your brain.
99% of the complex Excel models you built at 2 a.m. early in your career were glanced at once and thrown into a digital trash bin.
Now, you had to endure all of those things to sift through the dirt and find the 1% that actually mattered.
The right partner, the foundational mental model, the winning strategy.
But the vast majority of the caloric and temporal effort was still fundamentally wasted.
Look at the extreme reality of someone like Elon Musk. He is simultaneously managing multiple world-changing billion-dollar enterprises.
Yet he is tweeting constantly, playing video games, and doing 3-hour interviews.
Meanwhile, a line cook at a busy restaurant or a clerk at a corner store might be working 80 grueling, physically destructive hours a week.
The astronomical difference in their economic compensation has absolutely nothing to do with Musk physically moving his body 1 billion times faster or harder.
It is entirely 100% a byproduct of his judgment.
Judgment is the precise ability to accurately predict the long-term second and third-order consequences of your actions. In a world where your decisions are amplified by infinite leverage, judgment is the only true currency.
Let's look at the math of capital allocation to really ground this.
Okay, imagine you are managing $1 billion of capital. If you are right about the market 70% of the time, you do very well. You are considered a success.
But if your cognitive judgment is just slightly sharper, just a fraction more refined, and you are right 80% of the time,
The market will not just pay you 10% more money. Because of the geometric nature of leverage and compounding returns, the market will compensate you hundreds, if not thousands, of times more.
the premium on accurate judgment in a leveraged world is absolute and unforgiving.
It really is.
So the obvious desperate question becomes, how do we actually upgrade our judgment? We can't just clench our fists, furrow our brows, and will ourselves to be smarter.
No, the sources dive deep into evolutionary biology here, describing the human brain fundamentally as a memory prediction machine.
What does that mean in practice?
Your brain's primary evolutionary function is to take the very limited data it has experienced in the past and frantically try to map it onto the unknown future to ensure your survival.
It's just trying to keep us alive based on what it knows.
Right. The critical flaw is that if you rely entirely on specific, isolated past events, if your brain says, well, the housing market crashed exactly like this in 2008, so it will unfold exactly the same way in 2026, you will fail catastrophically.
Because the real world is a complex adaptive system.
Exactly. The exact same scenario never repeats identically because the agents in the system learn and adapt.
So what do we do instead?
What you need to upgrade your prediction machine is a robust lattice work of mental models. This is what Charlie Munger spent his life advocating.
You cannot just study business.
You have to aggressively pull the foundational, undeniable truths from multiple disciplines. You need to understand thermodynamics from physics, incentive structures from microeconomics, the prisoner's dilemma from game theory, and natural selection from evolutionary biology.
You weave them together.
So that when you face a novel problem, you aren't guessing, you are applying universal laws.
But wait, let me push back here, because this is a massive point of contention. You say we need to study all these disciplines to understand the world. Yet everyone in business, everyone on the news, is obsessed with studying macroeconomics.
Oh, the macro obsession.
Everyone is trying to predict what the Federal Reserve is going to do, where inflation is going, whether the Chinese property market will collapse. But the sources specifically, almost aggressively, warn against studying macroeconomics.
They do.
How can you possibly call macroeconomics junk science when a 0.5% change in the interest rate literally dictates the physics of whether millions of human beings can afford to buy a home? It has massive real-world consequences.
It has massive consequences, yes, but your ability to accurately predict it is practically zero.
Why is that?
The reason macroeconomics is considered junk science in this context comes down to epistemology and the philosophy of science, specifically Karl Popper's concept of falsifiability.
Falsifiability.
True science requires falsifiable predictions. You have to be able to isolate a variable, run a controlled experiment, and definitively prove a theory wrong.
Which you can't do with an economy.
You fundamentally cannot run a control group on the United States economy. You can't run two identical U.S. economies simultaneously to see if a quantitative easing program works better than an austerity program.
Because there are 330 million interacting human agents creating infinite noise.
Exactly. So people just cherry pick whatever historical statistics support their pre-existing political or emotional narratives.
As Nassim Taleb brilliantly points out, it is infinitely easier to macro bullshit than it is to micro bullshit.
When you argue macroeconomics, you are arguing religion and politics disguised as math.
That is such a clarifying distinction. You can't fake microeconomics. Supply, demand, profit margins, the behavioral psychology of a single consumer standing in an aisle, making a purchasing decision that is all grounded in immediate, measurable, physical reality.
You can test it right now.
If your lemonade stand costs $2 to run and you sell a cup for $1, you are losing money. There is no macroeconomic narrative that saves you from that math.
Exactly. The lesson is ignore the macro, obsess over the micro, don't waste your cognitive bandwidth worrying about macroenvironmentalism or trying to dictate how the global economy should be structured from the top down.
You have no control over it.
Focus entirely on microenvironmentalism, focus on microcharity, focus on the actual controllable inputs of your immediate environment, your family, your business.
Build your mental models on disciplines that embrace the strict limits of human knowledge, rather than disciplines built on hubris.
That's the key to the judgment matrix.
Okay, so we are loading our internal library with these rigorous mental models. We understand the physics and the micro-incentives, but on a daily basis, we are still bombarded with hundreds of rapid-fire decisions.
We can't sit down and run a thermodynamic analysis every time we need to make a choice.
We need heuristics, fast, highly calibrated rules of thumb.
The sources provide 3 incredibly powerful, actionable decision-making rules.
And because of your extraordinary memory sitting here with us, I know these are going to snap right into place for you. Here is heuristic number 1. If you cannot decide, the answer is NO.
This heuristic is vital because modern society suffers from a crippling, unnatural abundance of
We just
options.
have too many choices.
Evolutionarily, our neurology is completely ill-equipped for this. If you were a hunter-gatherer and you found a viable mate or you stumbled upon a lush valley for hunting, you committed immediately.
Because the mathematical probability of a second better option coming along was basically zero.
Today, you open a device in your pocket and you have infinite career paths, infinite potential partners on dating apps, infinite cities you could move to tomorrow. We are drowning in optionality.
Right. And because of that, if you ever find yourself staring at an Excel spreadsheet with an elaborate pros and cons list, agonizing over whether you should marry someone or accept a new job or sign a 10-year lease on a building,
The answer is a hard, absolute NO.
these types of decisions lock you in for years, sometimes decades. They consume massive amounts of your limited lifespan. If you do not feel an absolute, visceral, full-body yes in your gut, you are simply trying to logically rationalize what your subconscious already knows is a mediocre choice,
Pass on it. The world is too big. The next opportunity is right around the corner. Let it go.
which perfectly sets up the second and perhaps the most difficult heuristic.
If two choices are relatively equal, you must intentionally choose the path that involves short-term pain.
Oh, this one is absolutely brutal to implement, but mathematically undeniable. It originates from Naval's physical trainer, Jerzy Gregorek, who coined the maxim, hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life.
To understand why this works, you have to understand that your brain is fundamentally a conflict avoidance machine. It is deeply biologically wired to conserve calories and avoid short-term pain or discomfort at all costs.
So if you are analyzing two paths and your conscious mind assesses them as equally viable,
What is actually happening beneath the surface is a cognitive distortion. Your subconscious is artificially elevating the value of the path with short-term comfort to make it look just as appealing as the path with long-term gain.
it's the classic everyday choice between sitting on the couch and watching 3 hours of Netflix or forcing yourself to go to the gym.
The couch offers immediate short-term comfort.
But it leads to long-term pain. Your health slowly deteriorates, your energy drops, your joints ache. The gym is acute, deliberate, short-term pain, but it yields long-term comfort. You build a resilient, capable body that moves through the world effortlessly.
By pre-committing to intentionally lean into the short-term pain whenever there is a tie, you effectively hack your own neurology. You cancel out your brain's biological bias toward laziness.
And the third heuristic shifts from the physical to the psychological. It is specifically designed for navigating the endless maze of interpersonal conflict. Make the choice that leaves you more equanimous.
Equanimous.
It's a beautiful word.
Yeah.
Calm, composed, internally settled, unbothered. This concept is heavily influenced by the thinker Kapil Gupta.
Think about how often you are faced with a choice in conflict. You are deciding whether to fire off that vicious, perfectly crafted, angry email to a colleague or engage in a toxic political argument on social media.
Or exact petty revenge on someone who slighted you.
In that moment, ask yourself one question: which action will leave me with a quieter mind a week from now?
Almost without fail. The choice that satisfies your ego in the immediate moment, winning the argument, scoring the intellectual point, getting the dramatic last word, is the choice that creates weeks, if not months, of internal turmoil, rumination, and regret.
Choosing equanimity means having the profound discipline to sacrifice the cheap, short-term dopamine hit of the ego in exchange for long-term psychological peace. You simply let the insult drop. You walk away. You preserve your internal state at all costs.
Let's take another deep breath. Look at the flames in the fireplace. Just process the sheer volume of intellectual ground we have covered so far.
You've covered a lot.
We have now attached a flawlessly calibrated steering wheel to our massive wealth engine. You possess the infinite leverage from Module 1, and you wield the highly refined, micro-focused, painfully disciplined judgment from Module 2 to steer it perfectly.
You avoid the status traps. You rigorously apply your mental models.
You lean into short-term pain, you prioritize equanimity, and mathematically, you win. You win the game of capitalism, you acquire the money, you buy your time back, you achieve total geographic freedom.
You get every single physical thing you ever thought you wanted.
And at this point, you might reasonably think, great, I've solved existence, I've won the game of life. But here is the devastating twist.
The twist is the great tragedy of the successful. You can acquire the tens of millions of dollars, you can travel the globe on private jets, you can eat at Michelin-starred restaurants, you can have the beautiful spouse and the perfect house.
And suddenly, in the quiet of the night, you realize that your baseline level of internal peace hasn't changed a single fractional bit since you were broke.
You have simply traded one set of mundane, easily understandable anxieties for a much richer, highly complex, and vastly more expensive set of anxieties.
The external game is completely flawlessly solved, but the internal game remains an absolute disaster area. The engine is perfect, but the driver is miserable.
And that realization forces us directly into Module 3, Inbox Zero for the mind.
I find this realization so incredibly jarring, so contrary to everything we're taught. Because when we are young, all of our ambition, all of our drive is entirely focused on the concept of freedom too.
We desperately want the freedom to live anywhere in the world.
The freedom to buy that sports car without checking our bank account.
Huh.
The freedom to date whoever we want. The freedom to tell our boss to shove it. It is a philosophy of external conquering. We view the world as a resource to be subdued.
But once you achieve that freedom you crash headfirst into the biological reality of the hedonic treadmill.
Human beings are adaptation machines.
We adapt to our circumstances incredibly, frighteningly fast. The overwhelming thrill of moving into the massive new mansion completely fades in about a month. It just becomes the house.
The massive new salary quickly becomes the new baseline normal.
And suddenly you feel poor compared to the guy making 10 times as much. You realize that your desires are a bottomless pit. As Naval succinctly quotes, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want."
I want you to really let that sink in. Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. It is such a heavy, profound psychological framing.
Every single time you look at the world and say, "I want that," you are essentially signing a binding contract.
That says, I'm going to remain in a state of suffering and lack until I possess this object or achieve this status. And there's an old saying, a healthy person has 1,000 desires, but a sick person only has one.
When you are dying, you only want to live.
But when you are healthy and wealthy, you invent 1,000 petty desires to torture yourself with. So if we are fundamentally trapped by the biology of desire, what is the alternative? How do we escape the treadmill?
It requires a brutal paradigm shift from freedom to freedom from.
Freedom from?
Freedom from is the ultimate final stage of internal liberation. It is freedom from the visceral, knee-jerk reaction. It is freedom from the fragile, demanding ego. It is freedom from being easily angered by the opinions of strangers.
It is freedom from the chaotic, unexamined mind.
It requires the deep realization that true happiness is absolutely not a state of constant euphoric pleasure. Euphoria is a chemical spike. It is a Ferris wheel. If it goes up, the laws of neurochemistry dictate it must eventually come crashing down.
True, sustainable happiness is actually just the complete absence of suffering. It is a baseline of total peace.
And here is where the science gets really interesting and incredibly hopeful.
Modern society, and a lot of psychology, treats happiness like it's a fixed genetic trait, like eye color.
We act as if you were just born a grumpy, melancholic person or a bubbly, happy person, and your baseline is permanently set at birth.
But the sources we are drawing from argue fiercely, backed by the concept of neuroplasticity, that happiness is a highly trainable skill. You can literally treat it exactly like going to the gym to build a bicep.
But to train it, it requires a total paradigm shift regarding responsibility. You have to take absolute unflinching responsibility for your own internal state.
No doctor is going to prescribe you a pill that makes you permanently perfectly healthy.
No external guru is going to magically tap you on the forehead and make you permanently calm, and absolutely no external circumstance, not a yacht, not $1 billion, not a perfect spouse is going to make you permanently happy.
You have to firmly believe that you possess the agency to change your own baseline.
It's remarkably similar to the placebo effect. We know scientifically that if you have physical cancer, taking a sugar pill and believing it is powerful chemotherapy is not going to cure the physical tumor.
The physical world has strict, unforgiving laws.
But the mind is highly miraculously susceptible to the placebo effect. Because the mind is the perception. If you genuinely deeply believe that you have the power to train yourself to be happy, that belief alone begins to rewrite the neural pathways of your brain. You start interpreting events differently.
There is a story woven into the sources about a wise monk who was asked for his ultimate secret to profound, unshakable peace. His answer was so incredibly simple, yet so difficult to implement, it's haunting. He said, I say yes to everything that happens.
That is the ultimate expression of total acceptance of reality. Think about the mechanics of suffering. The absolute moment you look at a situation, say it starts raining on your wedding day or your flight gets canceled and your brain judges it as bad, you instantly separate yourself from reality and create friction.
That friction is suffering.
Nature itself doesn't judge. To an oak tree, there is no good weather or bad weather. There is no right or wrong. There is only the unbroken physical chain of cause and effect. It rains or it doesn't.
Our minds artificially manufacture all of our misery by wishing reality was something other than what it undeniably is right in front of us.
So the practical question is, how do we actually train this radical acceptance? How do we literally empty the mind of judgment?
We hear the word meditation thrown around constantly in corporate wellness seminars and pop culture.
But usually it's commoditized. It's about downloading a subscription app, putting on expensive noise-canceling headphones, and listening to a soothing, highly produced voice tell you to imagine a calm blue waterfall for 10 minutes so you can be more productive at your stressful job.
The sources explicitly, almost violently, reject that modern sanitized approach. That is not meditation. That is just another form of consumption.
That is just taking a temporary vacation from your anxiety. True meditation is the ultimate grueling single-player game. It is the profound and deeply uncomfortable art of doing absolutely nothing.
The way Naval vividly describes the untrained human mind is absolutely brilliant. He says an untrained mind is like a monkey flinging feces running around a room.
It's a great image.
It's erratic, it's aggressive, it's constantly screaming for attention, and it is completely, utterly out of your control. Just try to stop thinking for 10 seconds. You can't. The monkey immediately starts throwing things.
To actually tame that monkey, you have to understand the progressive levels of human cognition. Normally, in our waking state, we are constantly in a state of association.
You're just drifting.
We see a dog walking down the street, which reminds us of our childhood dog, which reminds us of an old apartment we lived in, which reminds us of a landlord we hated, which makes us angry about a current financial issue.
We are just being swept down an uncontrollable river of reactive thoughts.
The next level up from that is contemplation. This is intentionally focusing the mind on a specific problem or idea, the way a theoretical scientist or a poet focuses on their work.
Then comes concentration.
This is intense, single-pointed focus, often achieved by extreme athletes in a flow state or someone fiercely repeating a mantra to drown out all other noise.
But true meditation is the fourth state. It is beyond contemplation, and it is beyond concentration. It is the act of surrendering completely.
Yeah.
You sit in a quiet room, no music, no guided voices, no incense, back straight, and for one entire hour, you do absolutely nothing.
You do not fight your thoughts, because fighting them is just another thought, and you do not encourage your thoughts, you just sit and observe the chaos.
And what happens neurologically when you do this is profound and often terrifying. Think of your mind as having an internal psychological email inbox.
Over the course of your life, you have accumulated tens of thousands of unresolved emotional emails, stretching all the way back to your early childhood. Grievances, deep-seated fears, petty jealousies, unhealed traumas, moments of deep humiliation.
Because modern society allows us to be constantly distracted, we immediately look at our phones in the elevator, we listen to podcasts while we wash the dishes, we throw ourselves into our status games. We never, ever sit in silence to process those emails.
When you sit in a room for an hour doing nothing, the distraction mechanism is turned off, and all of those unresolved, terrifying files start to bubble up to the surface of your conscious mind.
It can be a harrowing experience. You sit there trying to be peaceful, and suddenly, out of nowhere, you are vividly remembering something intensely humiliating you said in the 3rd grade. Or you were hit with a wave of deep, paralyzing anxiety about a relationship failing.
The monkey is screaming and throwing things at the walls. But the absolute secret, the only way through, is to just watch it. Do not engage. Do not judge the thought. Let the monkey run till it gets exhausted.
The sources recommend a 60-day challenge. Sit for 1 unbroken hour a day for 60 days. You simply let these unresolved psychological files open, process themselves, and delete.
And eventually, it might take weeks or months, but if you sit long enough and you stop feeding the monkey, you eventually hit inbox 0 for the mind. The massive backlog of childhood trauma and daily anxieties is cleared. The rapid-fire thoughts finally slow down to a crawl.
And what remains underneath all of that noise, what was there the whole time, is a baseline state of profound, unshakable peace. You discover a happiness that is no longer conditionally dependent on the external world behaving exactly the way you want it to.
Okay, my friend, look into the fire again. We have traveled so far. Let's encapsulate exactly where we stand.
You have completely mastered the external world. You identified your specific knowledge, you applied infinite leverage, your judgment is flawless, and the wealth engine is running beautifully in the background, requiring none of your daily time.
You have also completely mastered the internal world. You sat through the fire of meditation. You let the decades of childhood emails bubble up and clear out. Your mind is quiet. Your psychological inbox is at absolute zero.
You are completely, utterly free from the tortures of desire and the demands of the ego.
Hmm.
But this brings us to a massive, terrifying philosophical void.
If you are entirely at peace and you desire absolutely nothing and you have all the money in the world, why do anything at all?
Why not just sit cross-legged on a cushion in a cave for the rest of your biological life? Why engage with humanity?
That is the ultimate existential question. It is the final boss of human philosophy. If both the internal game of the mind and the external game of society are completely solved and mastered, we are forced to step back and ask, what is the fundamental nature of the board we are playing on?
Why do we move the pieces at all if winning no longer brings us conditional happiness? Let's dive into our final frontier, Module 4, the single-player game and the meaning of life.
So how do we begin to unpack this? From the absolute moment we are born, every institution in society trains us to believe we are locked in a massive, high-stakes, multiplayer game.
We are systematically taught to care deeply about what our neighbors think of our lawn, what our boss thinks of our output, what the overarching culture demands of our morality. We are told our value is relative to the group.
But when you strip all of that away, the deep, undeniable, almost terrifying reality is that life is deeply, fundamentally subjective. You are born alone into the dark theater of your own consciousness.
You interpret every single event, every touch, every word entirely through the lonely, isolated filter of your own mind. And eventually, you will die alone. Your consciousness will blink out independent of everyone else.
And while that framing might sound incredibly bleak or nihilistic to a conditioned mind, it is actually the ultimate profound liberation. Framing life definitively as a single-player game completely, violently obliterates the victim mentality.
If you believe the world is acting upon you, that you are a helpless victim of your socioeconomic circumstance, a victim of society's structure, a victim of bad luck, you completely strip yourself of all agency.
You are just a leaf blown in the wind. But if you truly accept that it is a single-player game, you realize that you are the sole designer of the board. You are the programmer. You get to define what a win looks like.
It reminds me so much of Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not just begrudgingly tolerating what happens to you, not just surviving it, but actively, aggressively embracing every single event, good or bad, as exactly what was supposed to happen in your unique game.
If you don't like the game you are currently playing, you don't complain to the referee because there is no referee. You have the absolute, terrifying freedom to completely rewrite the rules of your own existence.
Which naturally brings us to the hardest, most daunting question humanity has ever grappled with. The question that has spawned thousands of religions and philosophies. What is the meaning of life?
The sources we are synthesizing tackle this head-on, and they distill it into a stark three-part answer. First, the meaning of life is deeply, unavoidably personal. It is subjective. You have to invent it yourself.
Any prepackaged meaning handed down to you by a guru, a formalized religion, a politician, or a philosopher is eventually going to sound hollow because it wasn't forged in the fires of your own experience. You have to dig into your own soul for it.
And the second part of the answer is the incredibly tough pill that the ego refuses to swallow. There is absolutely no intrinsic objective meaning to the universe. We are highly evolved primate monkeys sitting on a wet spinning rock orbiting a completely unremarkable mid-sized star tucked away in the spiral arm of a staggeringly massive galaxy floating in an infinitely expanding universe.
From a cosmic perspective, we've been dead for 13.8 billion years. We will be dead for hundreds of billions of years more. Even if human ambition reaches its absolute apex and we successfully colonize Mars or spread across the Milky Way, eventually, according to the laws of physics, it all fades.
It is the ultimate realization that it's turtles all the way down. Every time you ask why, you just uncover another why, endlessly receding into the void. There is no final, satisfying, objective answer.
Eventually, the entire universe will experience heat death. All the stars will exhaust their nuclear fuel and burn out. All energy will dissipate evenly across the expanding void. The cosmos will go completely cold, dark, and still.
Nothing you build, no financial empire you construct, no legacy you attempt to leave behind, no brilliant book you write is permanent. It all, mathematically and inevitably, goes to absolute zero.
There's this amazing clarifying thought experiment that Naval brings up involving Steve Jobs. Naval mentions meeting a wildly ambitious entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who was running himself absolutely ragged.
He was destroying his health, alienating his family, making miserable, painful sacrifices every single day because his ultimate goal was to be the next Steve Jobs. He wanted that legacy.
Naval looked at him and asked a very simple question. Do you want to be Steve Jobs right now? And the entrepreneur eagerly said, yes, absolutely. But Naval pointed out the brutal reality: Steve Jobs is dead. He is experiencing absolute zero.
He doesn't care about Apple's stock price today. He doesn't care about the iPhone 15. He doesn't care about his towering historical legacy. If he could, Steve Jobs would trade places with that stressed out, exhausted entrepreneur in a heartbeat just to be alive, just to be breathing, just to be sitting in this very room.
You don't actually want to be anyone else. You just want to be you, experiencing the vivid, singular reality of the present moment.
And that leads directly to the third part of the answer regarding meaning, which is the perspective of pure physics. In a universe governed by the second law of thermodynamics, where everything is relentlessly moving toward entropy, disorder, and ultimate heat death, what actually are living systems? What are we?
Life is a miraculous, localized reversal of entropy. We take completely disorganized matter, carbon, water, sunlight, and we aggressively organize it into complex breathing bodies, into towering cities, into beautiful art and music.
But the grand cosmic paradox is that by locally reversing entropy to create life and order, we actually accelerate the global entropy of the entire universe. We burn energy to live.
So we reach the ultimate conclusion. If the universe is ultimately undeniably doomed to heat death, and there is absolutely no grand, intrinsic, top-down purpose handed to us by the cosmos, how are we supposed to live? If nothing lasts, why do anything?
The answer is we must treat life not as a game, but as play.
This is a critical, profound distinction, largely drawn from ancient Hindu philosophy. It is the concept of Leela. A game, by definition, has strict rules, it has hostile opponents, it has a serious, stressful objective, and it has a defined end state where someone wins and someone loses.
You play a game specifically to win the prize at the end. But play. Think of a young child playing in a sandbox, building a castle they know the tide will wash away in an hour, has absolutely no external objective. The pure, simple act of doing it is its own entire reward.
Because every single thing is destined to fail physically and historically, the only logical, rational, defensible response to existence is to do things simply because you absolutely love doing them. You build the massive world-changing business not because you need the $1 billion to validate your ego, but because the pure act of building is your chosen form of art.
You love your family not because of some biological imperative to ensure your genetic legacy continues, but because the act of loving them in this fleeting, impermanent moment is overwhelmingly beautiful. You create, you laugh, you learn, completely and totally detached from the ultimate outcome because you know the outcome is ultimately zero anyway.
It truly is the absolute pinnacle of human development. When you can operate in the chaotic real world, achieving extreme undeniable excellence and wielding massive leverage, yet remaining completely internally unattached to the results, doing it purely, simply, for the overwhelming joy of the craft. That is Leela. That is true cosmic play.
Wow. Okay, my friend, let's take one last long look around this library. The fire has burned down to embers, casting a warm, fading light across the books. We have been on a massive, profound intellectual journey together today.
We started by building a relentless wealth engine, learning to completely escape toxic status games, excavating your innate specific knowledge, and applying the infinite permissionless leverage of code and media to build true abundance.
We attach the judgment matrix using cross-disciplinary mental models and the brutal discipline of short-term pain to steer that leverage flawlessly.
Then we turned our gaze inward, sitting through the fire of meditation, clearing out the mind's childhood inbox to achieve true, unshakable freedom from.
And finally, we looked up at the cosmos, accepting the inevitable heat death of the universe and realizing that this entire beautiful single-player canvas is meant purely for play. Because of your extraordinary memory, this entire architecture is now permanently yours.
And as we close the heavy oak doors on our time here today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to process in your vast internal library. If we truly deeply accept that the universe is destined for heat death, that all your hard-earned leverage, reputation, and wealth will eventually fade to dust, and that your mental inbox is completely, wonderfully empty of all unfulfilled, anxious desires, then what is the very first thing you will choose to do tomorrow morning, purely for the absolute joy of doing it? Because whatever that action is, that is the only true wealth you have left.
Thank you so much for sitting with us in this room today. It has been an absolute privilege to share this fire and these ideas with you.
Until next time.